Well, it's 1 o'clock Eastern time, and that means it's time for the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. My name is Dave McCormick. I'm VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined by Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Today, we're going to be going over something I think pretty cool. We're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Alpha product roadmap for the cloud transform, and more importantly, for this particular session is for Alpha Anywhere. So we're going to get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter. And I'll let you know when I can see your screen. And there it is.
By the way, luckily, I am still above water, although I can't drink the water. That's kind of challenging here.
Oh, is that true? Or is it flooding down in Texas? Is that
it abated somewhat, but now we're getting some more storms. I guess that hurricane off the Pacific's pushing stuff up our way. So it's starting to rain again up here. And the dams are pretty full already. So they're still letting water out. But the weird thing is Austin as a city, apparently something happened, like they got backflow. Actually, I bet one of our esteemed colleagues or developers who works in the water area, I know people make apps for water systems and who are using Alpha for that. Something happened and literally the whole city's like no water. I mean, the restaurants say, sorry, here's a bottle of water, and they're actually running out of bottled water. It's pretty intriguing. Crazy.
So is it just you can use it for washing and stuff like that, but not drinking?
Yeah, you can boil water.
You need to boil it. You're under boil order, I think they call that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so pretty wild. But anyway, I'm doing good. It's a little rain here, and but ready to talk. We got some fun stuff to go over today. It's really exciting. As I call them, the Oompa Loompas have been very busy in the back office developing new features for both Alpha Anywhere and Transform, and we're going to kind of show a little bit of what they're working on, and more importantly, what the direction is going forward, which is very exciting. Good stuff. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And remember, that's the first part of this. We obviously want to answer any of your questions. We actually had an individual sent in a question. We weren't able to get that lined up. I need to do a little follow-up. So we want to say thank you for individuals who send us questions to guides@alphasoftware.com. We'll be following up on that very quickly. But if you can take the time to go to the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel and put in your questions, we will be doing our darndest to try and get those answered while we're here today. And if not, we can always follow up. And again, as we mentioned, you can send ahead of time to guides@alphasoftware.com questions that help us guide our content as we go forward. So really exciting stuff. DevCon was fabulous, incredible at the B Hotel, our B Resort and Spa, and it worked out really well. Everybody had a really good time, but one of the highlights of it was our esteemed colleague, Selwyn Ravens, who took the time to go through kind of where the product is going, both on the Alpha Anywhere and the Alpha Transform. And that's what we're going to focus on today, is we're going to spend a little time walking through that roadmap and showing kind of where things are going. Excuse me, a little cough there. So, and I'd like to thank our other colleague, Amy, for taking the time to turn that roadmap into something very visually compelling that talks about where we're going and the kind of timeframes we're looking on it. So you'll see in here, we have 4 key areas on the left-hand side for our development roadmap. There's client-side improvements, there's server-side improvements, and these are both for Alpha Anywhere. There's also Alpha Cloud improvements to make Alpha Cloud even more powerful than it is today, and then Transform. And one of the very interesting things that I really came across when we were at the DevCon is the fact that, Transform is built on top of Alpha, meaning that we're using Alpha Anywhere to develop Transform. So the app on the phone uses Alpha Anywhere. The server on the back end that's doing the integration and the synchronization of data and displaying the Alpha Transform Central Web dashboard is all built on Alpha. And so what we're finding out very intriguingly is that Alpha Transform is driving some very powerful features back into Alpha Anywhere because it needs certain requirements, and those are going back into the base product because that's what it's built on top of. And more importantly, those are now available to everybody as far as they're able to use that in their own Alpha Anywhere. So we're going to go through here. So again, the key thing is on the Alpha Anywhere area, client side, server side, Alpha Cloud. on the transform side, we have a lot of other key capabilities here. So I'm going to cover alpha anywhere in the elements there, and then we're going to dive into the alpha transform. So as we mentioned, there are really 4 key areas that are going on there, and I'm including ID as a separate one here, sort of client-side improvements. So the client side, i.e. running on the mobile phone, running in the web browser. The server side, what is actually happening back on the server, whether it's running standalone on, say, ZebraHost or wherever, or on Alpha Cloud, or any other kind of variant of that, both the IIS and the standalone. And then we'll talk a little bit more about specifics of Alpha Cloud, and then some cool stuff that's going to be in the IDE coming up pretty soon. So first, we're going to talk about client side. A lot of effort is really going into the UX builder to make it even easier to develop, and also make it faster and easier to see what you're developing. Kind of drive that, a lot of people are looking for what you see, what you get. There's certain downsides of having that kind of editor when you start talking about deploying across multiple platforms. So Alpha uses a declarative methodology. And so we're actually improving it to make it easier to work on large components, because over time, your components tend to get pretty big. There tends to be a lot of pieces that are associated with it. So we're having a new page view, which you'll see in a few moments. And then also we're working on an instant preview functionality, or the developers are working on it. So as you make edits to Alpha, you can see the results of those edits instantaneously. I'm going to actually show in a moment where you can actually kind of get there, but it's more of an update refresh. We're moving on making that instantaneous. There's also going to be drag and drop layout coming. That's what you see is what you get. There's a lot of people who are starting out that's a natural way to start out. So we want to help people with that. So we want to support both the more sophisticated development using declarative, but also introduce more drag and drop functionality for people who are starting out with the tool. And then also some really exciting new control types. So the first thing I want to show is that right now, and I'll show this screen right here, this kind of, and I know this is a little squeezed, so bear with me as it's a little squeezed here. Currently, if you're working within the alpha, you have a environment where it's sort of monolithic. You have different tabs and different areas in here. For instance, I've got a panel navigator with a header and a series of cards. And so there's a hierarchical structure built into alpha in terms of how you define the structure of your app. And currently that's kind of monolithic in terms of showing there. Now you can show, sort of double click and kind of expand and de-expand different parts of it to make it, but it tends to be one big long thing. And that over time, especially when you have a larger, more complex product, you start to realize that it's a little harder to manage. The other part of it that's important too is that often these panel cards have different subsets of functional capability. You have sort of your list area, and then your detail view, and then maybe another section of your app kind of scenario. So being introduced is a new capability to actually segment it. So now instead of having everything in one, we'll actually have a situation where you can have on the left-hand side of the screen sort of a higher level viewpoint of what it is. And then when you click on one of those elements, like say a panel card, then you have the editor that's available right here that has then the final pieces of it. So now you can say, hey, I'm working on the account panel. So I'll select that. And then now instead of seeing all this stuff and having to scroll up and down and other stuff, my editor is going to just show me that subset of functionality that's within that area. And that's often what you're doing is you're working on different parts of your application, and each part is in a subset, and you want to be able to focus on that. So we anticipate that will increase the efficiency because it'll be easier to find kind of what you're working on. You can just go right into account panel, and then within that, you can really kind of monotask and focus just on the content within that. But you don't lose the capability of using either view, and you don't lose the view of all these items are essentially on the same level as UX, so you can refer to them in your action JavaScript and other pieces like that. So what's really exciting about that is it's going to become quicker and easier for you to develop these kind of capabilities here. Now, another is the instant preview. And in order to kind of show you what we're talking about, I'm going to run over into my development environment here. And I'm going to go to my default, and I'm just going to open up an example UX here. So I'm going to open up my example UX, and you'll see, I'm not writing, we haven't introduced those other pieces yet, but we'll have here. But you'll see in here, that on my, I've got my analysis of, or my design and structure of what my app wants to be. So I can click working preview. That'll bring up the working preview so I can actually see it in operation. And there's always been this capability within the system. So wait till it renders that real quick. I can actually detach this working preview window, and now I can see it over here. So when I'm in my design, I can actually have my app working over here, and everything I do here, it's fully operational. Then I can come back in here and say, this list of customers, I want to modify that. So I'm going to go to my list of customers over here, leaving this open. I'm going to go to my list layout, and let's say I want to add after phone another piece of data. So I'll just go in here and I'm going to edit my HTML, and I'll put in, let's say, my fax number there. Okay. Now I can quickly go back over here, hit refresh. It's going to refresh the component. And you can see right now, I see my new updated, where I have my list, I have my name, I have my phone number, now my fax number. So when I make edits over here, I just refresh here so I don't have to click on working preview and the other pieces here. And there's actually something called automatic refresh, which will automatically update this on an ongoing basis. But at times you're doing a bunch of edits, you don't want it to be able to refresh. Now, where the team's going towards is the ability to go in here, make this edit right here, and see it instantaneously update a representation of the user interface. So to bring it closer, so as you edit things over here, you see in real time what it's doing, the font changes, the address. And you'll see that in a lot of CSS tools. People will have their web page open on the left, and then there's CSS on the right. And as they edit their CSS, you'll see the page instantly update so they can see the impact. And so it drives that efficiency because they can do an edit, see the result, tweak, 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 boom, and then they're done. So really a lot of efforts going on around this to make it easier for you to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to make some edits in my alpha environment and immediately see a representation show up there. And that's a lot of work has actually gone on behind the scenes already to facilitate that, to make that happen. And what's nice is we'll now be able to start seeing that happen inside the IDE. So that's the idea of having what's called a instant preview of the current page by doing that. So it's pretty handy. And also, by the way, we're using a page terminology. If I go back here real quick, the idea is this panel card is the only thing you're seeing, so that's kind of a page. So you're kind of working on subsets of pieces within there. So you'd be working on products panel, you'd be editing these things, and then over here, maybe you would see an instant update of it. And you can actually see that in Transform Central. If you go into Transform Central right now, and actually, let me go ahead and do that just to show everybody kind of where. And Transform is, again, helping do this. So let's go to Transform Central, and I'll open that up. Bear with me. And just sound check, everything coming through okay, Dave? Just make sure I'm not losing anybody.
Nope. Well, I can't say you're not losing anybody, but
you're
going through loud
clear. Brutal. You are mean. You are a mean person. So let me go ahead and log into mine.
This is cool stuff, and it's inspiring some cool questions. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
and if we can't answer those, we'll get them over to the people who actually do this stuff. So that's always good.
We'll get you the right answers, even. So I'd like to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I've logged in to Transform Central, and right off the bat, here's one of the most powerful things about Transform. All of your editing happens in a web browser. So you notice I'm not downloading an IDE and other pieces like that. Now, granted, it doesn't have all the power of Alpha Anywhere in the history of Alpha Anywhere, but that's kind of where we're going, where you can do more and more through the website. So you'll see right here that I have a form here, and this is called my boiler time form. And I can edit my form commands right here. Here's my form over here. So let's say I want to add a new text in there. So I'm going to add that in there, and I'll create a type text in there, and I'll go ahead and add that in there. Come on. Oh, there we go. And notice on the right-hand side, it shows up. So those are my heading, and then go to here, and I'll put in here, and I'll say my cool preview, and watch what happens on the right-hand side. You'll see that as I edited here, you saw an instant representation. So let's go to my field title here, and we'll call that, let's say it's my cool field. Notice that my cool feel. By the way, guess what this is? This is Alpha Anywhere. This is a UX. It's a very sophisticated one, but we built on top of Alpha Anywhere this. So these same concepts of edit the concept on the left and then see the instantaneous representation on the right, you'll see is what is going on. That's what you can anticipate in the near future from Alpha Anywhere, so that things just happen a lot quicker. And when you put in like different formatting pieces and things like that, you're going to start seeing that happen quicker. So we're very excited about that. And that's going to be a big plus for developers in terms of what they're doing from there. And we're working on the drag and drop layout. That's very early, and we're kind of focusing on the instant preview first because most of our developers can use that today. For drag and drop, that's again in the process to work for making it a little simpler to do those pieces there. Now, a couple other things we're going to be working on and is actually in process, and we're actually starting to see that. First, new styles. So up to now in Alpha Anywhere, we have had our dominant style here, and I'll go ahead and open that up, called Alpha. And that has been our dominant style for a couple of years now. And the team is working we've had a lot of requests for two things. One is enhanced style capabilities, and more importantly, new styles that kind of match some more things out there. So a good example of that is the Google material design. If you open up Google Mail, if you open up any of their dashboards, if you open up Google Calendar, you're going to see the material design. It's a very flat, very simple, very easy reading kind of style. So we're using that as kind of the base point because obviously Google has spent a lot of money making sure their style is the right one and that it's got all the components into it. So we're going to be doing that, which is very, very exciting. And we're also enhancing the kind of styles we already have. So let me go ahead and go here. And I'm jumping around on everybody. I hope you're okay. I'm not giving anybody any. So I'm going to go to my release notes and go into the pre-release notes. Actually, in the newest pre-release, some of this is starting to be shown. So let's go ahead and open that up. Let's go to the new pre-release here. And this is very exciting stuff because it's going to really allow us to kind of to close that gap, make our user interfaces look just really sharp. So what you'll see in the system as I scroll down, there's also some other cool stuff that came out of the there. You'll now start to see we have new sub themes. So for the alpha style sheet, our existing one, we now have new sub themes for like buttons and stuff like that. And what's really cool about that is we're using things like that have animations. So if you hover over a button, you'll see like a ripple effect or some other kind of effect that goes on to it. And again, this is in the current pre-release. Feel free to download that, install it, try it out. We highly recommend that you don't use it for production because it is pre-release and I usually set it up on a different virtual machine so I don't muck anything that I'm doing there. But we're already investing a lot in the themes aspect to make it easier to not only we're going to have new themes, but also very importantly, we're going to be able to enhance the themes we already have. So now you can see the buttons have these nice rounded edges instead of it. So you're going to have a lot more sort of choices that you have available when you start designing with alpha so that you can do more and more, make your apps look better and better. But again, you're just clicking on it, selecting a theme and calling it a day. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing CSS and other things there. And the team is working very heavily on this because we know that we want our apps not only to be very powerful, very capable, but beyond that, we want them to look great. And that's always a constant desire of our developers and our development team to put that together. So we've got some new styles, some new style sub-theme capabilities. We got those coming down the road. We also have the TabbedUI that's looked. In fact, we've already started down that road in terms of now you can use in the TabbedUI, instead of the traditional buttons on the left-hand side of the screen, you can now use the expanding menu. And actually, it's in the pre-release. So let's go TabbedUI. There we go. So now, before you had like a tree kind of structure here with an icon in there. Now you can use our beautiful expanding menu capability to make it look much more modern and sort of Web 2.0, which allows you to do all this styling and add your own CSV icons. And oh, it's really cool. I'll tell you, this is going to be a cheap upgrade for anybody. Anybody who already has a existing TabbedUI with a menu on there, check this out because you'll be able to go in and very rarely convert that to an expanding menu and then with a few tweaks make it look gorgeous. And you have these really cool things where you click on it and it slides down and gives you just more of a modern, really enhanced looking capability. So that's already in the pre-release. So feel free to check that out. It's actually tightly built in there, so you don't have to recreate the wheel to take advantage of that. So we're doing that, but we're also going to enhance other parts of the TabbedUI in terms of templating it, making it much more powerful, making it a go-to component for everybody in terms of how they do their systems there. And then also our friend, the grid component. Man, you can never forget the grid component. I always love the grid component because it was easy to put together a grid with an enormous amount of functionality. And we're going to be giving the grid component an upgraded look. So the grid component still looks a little dated. And even if you use like the alpha style, it's just kind of alpha style was built for a mobile phone. So when you use it on a grid, it kind of doesn't, it's not very compact. So we're applying some of our elbow grease to the look and feel for the grid component. So we're very excited about that because when you're doing dashboards, when you're doing things on the website, you're not too worried about a mobile phone and responsive layout. A grid is just so quick and easy to build and put together. It's just a great component, and it has all this functionality built into it. It's rock solid since we have been using it for years and years and years. It's been hammered. It has a lot of functionality and is also rock solid. So we're doing that. Now, on the server side, dun, 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 we are improving a lot of stuff on that. First and foremost is reducing the memory footprint of the server. And this is always important as we see more and more of our clients increase the amount of volume of data and information going through their server, that we want to reduce that memory footprint so that on your development machine takes less space, but also when it's running on the server is more efficient. You're not consuming as much memory and other things like that, which leaves that memory for other kind of in-state information from there. We're also making Xbasic thread safe. This will help you from scalability. For people who aren't familiar with it, threads are a core capability where you can have multiple threads running on a processor, and you have to do certain key things to make sure they don't step on each other. And so that's going on there. And the cool thing about threading is that instead of like, if you have like 20 transactions hitting at one time, if you set it up correctly with threads, you can actually process those very close to each other, meaning that you don't have to put them in linearly one after another. You can like say, okay, I want to spawn all these and have them running. And modern processors are at the deep level have a great way of just like working on one thing while it's waiting for something else, parking it, doing something else. By making Xbasic thread safe, we're going to be able to enhance the performance of the overall server, thus be able to do more throughput through the server. And that's what I'm saying on the second part. And I guess you could read if you want right here, but the key is server throughput. That means you can have more users on the same server than you had before. And that's one of the key things. We want to get huge amount of value for our customers. And the value is not only how fast you can develop stuff with Alpha, but also how fast it runs when you have it in production and how many people you can actually run on at one time. Now, another very exciting area, which is very intriguing, and as I've been doing more web API stuff, I'm really diving into this a lot more, is JavaScript is an alternative to Xbasic on the server side scripting. Now, we have had the ability, and hold on one second, let me adjust my mic real quick. Sorry about that. I just started hearing some crackling. I want to make sure I got it, nipped it in the bud. If I go into Alpha here, and I'll go to our web projects control panel, for some time now, we've had the ability to use Node. And Node is basically server-side JavaScript, meaning that instead of using a language like PHP, Xbasic, Java, whatever, JavaScript is the #1 language in the world, meaning more programmers, more developers use JavaScript than any other language out there. And you can search that out. And so there's an enormous amount of people who know JavaScript. Now, the number of people who know Xbasic is a little smaller because that's kind of specific to Alpha. But if you include all the Visual Basic.NET people and everything else, there's a lot of people who know Basic from that standpoint. So we have had for some time the ability to integrate and use Node in Alpha. And so basically what you could do is take, let me go ahead and open this up. You could actually put in some Node code and then wrap it so you could call it in Xbasic. So the idea behind it is that you figure out how to do things in Node and then you wrap it and make it available in Xbasic. And in fact, it's pretty cool. If you go here and you say new, we have this thing called a Node API, which is basically that concept of taking Node and a code and wrapping it in there. And what the really powerful thing about Node is that there's a huge amount of libraries that exist to connect to other systems. So if you want to connect to another system, it's actually often very easy to do it in Node because a lot of the base code has been done versus writing, raw API calls to the other system there. Now, what the team is working on is the ability to write within Alpha instead of running, like, for instance, the traditional way we would do that is on a button. Let me go over here. I would have a button here. And then what I would do is I would say on my action JavaScript, add a new, and then I'd run an Ajax callback. That Ajax callback would call back to the server and run Xbasic. Well, we're going to add the same functionality, but we're going to skip the Xbasic and just say, go back and run some Node code and interact from there. So it's going to create a lot of simplicity for our developers. And more importantly, it's going to allow a lot of our developers who don't know Xbasic, who know JavaScript, to already start pick it up and run it. And we're seeing that a lot in enterprises. We're working on remote debugging. That means to be able to monitor scripts that are running on the server and see what's going on there. Often that was kind of challenging. And also we're going to dramatically reduce the effort to install IIS. IIS tends to be a little, it's a huge amount of power, but there's a lot of steps you have to go through to install IIS and get it to work from there. Got to keep moving. Yep. Okay, good. We're not bad. Now, Alpha Cloud is also going to get a lot of improvements. The key improvement is around publishing. If you've used Alpha Cloud, obviously there's an enormous amount of power in Alpha Cloud. But what we've been finding is that it can be cumbersome to publish it. I think we've spoiled our developers, and that's what our primary goal is. When you publish to either locally or to your Alpha standalone, it's usually a couple seconds. You go publish, boom, 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 the files are there, you run it, you're good to go. With Alpha Cloud, because of the way it's structured, and it's structured for this way for a good reason, it takes a while to publish to it because it actually packages things up, puts it on the server unpacks it and puts it there. So one of the key things we're working on is a combination of incremental publishing, which will reduce the packet size, and more importantly, is just speeding up that overall process. So you get that wonderful, make a change to my app, get it up on the cloud, and see what's going on there. We're also going to start work on including a SQL database for development purposes. Right now, when you get Alpha Cloud, you kind of have to bring your own database structure. And a lot of people who are new just kind of say, hey, I kind of want an all-in-one solution so I can just simplify and get this thing up and running. And then continued improvements to ease of use, just, the dashboards and the configuration panels, and just making it a little easier to understand what's going on and how to configure it and set it up. Once you kind of know it, you can get it, but to reduce that learning curve. And one of the real key goals of all else is to really allow people to use Alpha Cloud as their sort of hosting method of choice, meaning that, since we do so much in Alpha Cloud, we want to make it so, I got to spin up a new system. Boom, Alpha Cloud, be done, and you're online. Everything's there. It's super powerful. It's super resistant to problems and issues, and it just runs like clockwork. And the last is containers. And containers are really powerful because, and we know what containers are in Alpha world, but containers, think Docker, other things like that. Containers are a new way to deploy apps. So let's say you had a stack, and I'm going to take an example of that. Is let's say you want to deploy to a new server, and you've got a database like MySQL, and then you have the Alpha server, and then you have a couple other things you need on there to do performance or whatever, or a couple other features, etc. That's called a stack. And you have to go through the server. You got to set all these things up, configure the server, good to go. Takes a little while, but once you get it running, it's good to go. Well, what containers do is it actually takes all of that stuff and runs it on top of the server. So when you want to employ that sort of environment on your, like another server, instead of going through the whole configuration setup process, which I know a lot of our colleagues out there have gone through that process, and it can be trial and error. There are sometimes you need to have certain updates or certain versions of software on that new box, and getting that all set up can be kind of a pain. Well, by containerizing Alpha, it allows us to then just, boom, put a container on there. We know everything inside that container works great, and then the server on that side works it. And that's kind of where the whole industry is going. A lot of money is going into containers because it makes DevOps simpler. When you need to create a new version of something, instead of getting a administrator go through and set everything up and check it out and everything else, you just deploy, clone a container, put it on there, make some tweaks, and you're good to go. So you get much more reliable. Plus, containers can be moved from server to server as you need stuff. And in our case, which is very, very important right now, Alpha Cloud runs on top of AWS, and it's working great and all that. But by going to a container methodology, we're going to be able to do two things. One is we could quickly move it to, say, Azure or another platform, another cloud provider, Google, IBM, whoever it happens to be. And more importantly, you can provide containers and be able to load those onto companies' enterprise environments. So many enterprises are going this way just to reduce their DevOps costs. So what you'll be able to do is we can, instead of saying, here's your install and here's all your instructions, we can have a pre-made container that they can just download, install, and their administrators will have it up and running in a very short period of time. Plus, they know how to manage and back up and do all other stuff with containers. It's kind of a very powerful industry standard that's moving forward from there. So getting faster, easier, making it a more, alpha-like experience to deploy it to the server, to Alpha Cloud, free cloud database for development purposes only. And then we've got a bunch of improvements to make it much, much easier to use Alpha Cloud. Now, Transform, a couple quick pages on that, and then we'll open it up to questions. First and foremost, styling. Currently, if we look at Transform and the style of it, let's go over here. It's got a certain style, and you can bring in your own colors and some CSS, and you can make some changes and things like that, but it's semi-limited, and that was on purpose. The focus was fast and easy without any coding or anything else. So now that we have the core functionality together, we're investing time to make it easier for you to style. So we're going to have some better default styles that are available, but also we're going to give more control to the developer to be able to add their own CSS to make their apps look a lot, or their transform systems to make it look a lot more like what they're doing from there. We're also working on a desktop version of Transform. You notice right now the filler is a web app or is a mobile app, and you get that from the App Store, download it. And now what we're working on is that we want to be able to allow you to create Transform and use that on a web browser. So instead of having a mobile device, you could actually pull it up right on there. And the core of that works fine because we're Alpha Anywhere. But what happens to styling? You have more screen real estate. So they're somewhat linked because you want to be able to say when you're running on desktop, you want four of these things side by side versus on top of each other, and they're sort of interrelated in terms of what's going on there. So that's the work that's going there. We're going to improve the management console. You're going to see continued incremental and powerful improvements in look, feel, style, ease of use. Both the management console and also more dashboarding capabilities. And super important is TPL. TPL is going to continue to have an enormous amount of enhancements. And for people, if you're not already interested in this, you should join our Transform Tuesdays hosted by our esteemed colleague, Dave McCormick there. And we've been showing a lot of TPL functionality. What was great at the developers convention, our conference, we actually spent some time showing TPL and how it worked and have some great things around that. It takes Transform from being just a form filler, a form product, to being so much more. Very, very exciting. So a couple of things we're going to be doing is right now, TPL is purely a language that's on there. So you kind of have to know how to code. But things going on, and this was demonstrated, is that we're going to have more builders and genies to make it more like Alpha Anywhere, where you're doing, say, in Alpha Anywhere, when you're doing validation, you kind of open up a panel and click, 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 and then all the underlying JavaScript is done for you. We're going to achieve the same thing where actually we'll have builders and genies that make TPL functionality simple. So you don't have to learn the language, but you can always have that available if you want. We're doing the transform filler. We're making it look a little nicer, enhancing the CSS. And also we're working on generating transform forms automatically from fillable PDFs. We have that running in prototype form, and it's really cool. It means people who are already using fillable PDFs to do their forms in their company can use Transform to do that instead and get all the power of that. And then also the ability to merge the data back out of their and back into that PDF. So as you can see, the Oompa Loompas are very, very busy. They not only have a ton of Alpha Anywhere stuff, but Transform work that's going on. Nice thing about that Transform work is that kind of feeds back right into Alpha Anywhere. And also Alpha Cloud is undergoing a lot of work to make it much easier, kind of make it easy for you to spin up and put up Alpha Cloud solutions. very readily without a lot of effort, which we hope will become kind of the preferred model, because we want you to focus on building your app, not working on servers and setups and configurations and other things like that. We really want you to be able to move quickly. And we find that that's that whole hosting aspect. The more we can automate that, the more we can make that simple and child's play, the more we're going to see more apps come up, the more successful you'll be and more successful we will. And Transform, just like it's a bat out of hell. It's continuing to improve so rapidly, and it's really getting much more powerful than it's been in some time. So I'm going to pass that back to Dave for any Q&A.
Excellent. So a couple things that I want to bring up, because there were some questions around Transform and people are confused. Is this it's an easy to use product, but is it an end user product? And the answer is that it can be, but it really is a developer's product. And we're finding more and more developers are sort of getting hip to Transform. And it's sort of a weird thing if you think about it. It's less powerful than Alpha Anywhere. It has a completely different sort of pricing model behind it. But what it lets you do is it lets you build apps very, very quickly that you can demonstrate to clients. At the end of the day, you can probably finish that app using Alpha Transform, but you may very well decide, you know what, for either economic reasons or for more control reasons, I'd like to do that using Alpha Anywhere instead, which you can always do. In fact, we tried to make it a little bit more attractive and easier recently. And so we're offering right now what's called a Sandbox license, which means that developing your Transform apps and showing them off won't cost you anything. And if you're interested in getting a free Transform Sandbox license, send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com or to TF Service. That's sort of our official email, Transform Service, tfservice@alphasoftware.com. We'd be happy to hook you up with that. So they really, another thing I want to talk about, another sort of point of integration, is that we're looking at being able to allow you to build out your forms and simple applications really quickly using Transform, which I'm not sure that we've demonstrated to this crowd in a while. We certainly showed off on Transform Tuesday, but allow you to build out these forms and then go into Alpha Anywhere and take what you've built and bring it right into your Alpha Anywhere application. So in other words, using Transform is just sort of an extension of the development environment, but at the end of the day, what you're left with is still an Alpha Anywhere app. And that kind of leads me into the next question, and one that, Dion, I hope you can help us out with. And that has to do with sort of the overall high-level view of publishing your app. Let's say you built out a UX control or something like that, and you want to get that into the store, either into Apple iOS store, the App Store, or into Google Play for Android. And what is required for that? If you have Alpha Anywhere, you basically have almost everything that you need except for a developer's account from Apple, which gives you permission to publish it there, and a developer's account from Google, which gives you permission to do it there. But technically, you have all the rest of the tools already built into Alpha Anywhere. And if you wouldn't mind, if we could just go over just a quick overview, because we had a couple people here with those questions.
Sure.
In that would be great.
Yeah. So actually, let me go ahead and let's go right here and do this. I wish Chris was here. He knows that.
Chris is our expert when it comes to that stuff, right?
Okay. So you built your great app, you got it running, you ought to get it out in the store. So, you have your PhoneGap build, and I'm just going to put the process here. So, so first thing you need to do is get a dev account on Google/Apple. So though you go to their sites, I don't know what Google's Apple charges like $100 a year.
Yeah, I think it's just $100. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, from there. And then what you're going to do is get certificates from that dev account. So the idea behind it is that when it's running on the phone, and iOS is much more strict than ours, but what happens is that you need to have what's called a certificate. And there's a couple different certificates you need to add to your application. So when it's installed, before it's installed, they'll check to see if that certificate is valid to be able to, it's sort of your ticket to ride, to be able to install on the phone. And then once it's running on the phone, it's a ticket. So both Apple knows who is the owner of that application. So it's a very powerful. So you have to get these certificates from that. And there's a different process for Apple and Google, but it's very similar in idea. You're going onto their site, you're filling out some information, and then you get these certificates, and they're actually files that you download. Now, once you have those you go PhoneGap build, add certificates. So what happens is when you use PhoneGap build, which takes our alpha application, wraps it, and puts it into a form that can be downloaded on the phone, during that process, PhoneGap build will grab those certificates and embed them into what's called an IPK for the Apple environment, APK for Android. Now, Android has an advance because the user can say, I don't need a certificate. I'm going to install this and use it for testing purposes. Whereas Apple, you always have to have a certificate. There's ways you can do it where you can get the person's unique ID of their phone. They also have a test fly capability. There's different methods there. Apple's just a lot more strict than any Google Android. So I tend to do most of my development on Android just because I don't have to mess with certificates and stuff like that. And then when I'm getting ready, I can go on and do my Apple stuff to make sure everything's good to go. So you build your app with the certificates, and then at that point, you can submit the app to the app stores. And that includes other data. So you're going to include your app, but they also want other information, some screenshots, some other data. And there's a process for each Google and Apple. They handle it a little differently in terms of what they want before you show up in their app store on there. So you'll not only submit your app, but you also have these other content elements, metadata that you need to include with that in there. And then if all goes well, on App Store. So once that has been approved by those, then they'll publish it on the App Store. It used to take a long time with Apple, but they've gotten a lot faster. I think they've applied a lot of automation to it. Google's always really pretty quick to get your app out there, but you can expect, for Google, it's about a day, and I think Apple these days, 2 to 3 days or so, depending on, the kind of nature of the change.
That's all we've seen it taking. Yeah, it's pretty quick.
Now, let me remind you that we have something called, it's instant publish. Keep that in mind.
Instant update.
Yep, instant update. I'm sorry, not publish. Thank you. So if you are going to put out an update, you would normally have to go through these 3 steps. So you would redo the build. The certificates are still there, so it includes those certificates in it. Then you submit it to the stores with that information. They publish it on the store and it comes down. But with instant update, you want to really get to know that, because what you can do is bypass this. Once you're out on the App Store, you can do updates to your app dynamically using the instant update functionality, meaning when your app loads up or in your app, you can call to the server, download some new content and put it on that app, and you're good to go. You can always bring down new data. That's always been the case. But if you want to add a new UX, or you want to add some new fields to your form, or do something different to your actual app itself, instant update saves you a lot of time and energy, because you can literally just publish it like you would publish to a website and call it a day. So that's a general item. Get your dev account, get your certificates from that dev account, then using those certificates, build your app with PhoneGap. On PhoneGap build, you actually say, here's my certificates for my iOS, here's my one for Google or for Android. It includes that in there. Then you get the APK or IPK. You submit that to the stores along with whatever data they want, and then they'll take care of publishing that actually to the store, and then you're good to go. So that's kind of a high level there. And actually, if you'll notice, Sarah put some information in the chat box about the instant update if you want to look into that a little further.
Fantastic. Yeah. So PhoneGap basically takes, just sort of to clear it up, it takes an application that you've built, an HTML5 application, which is really what at the end of the day a web application is, and it packages it so it's like a native application. So the question is, though, is this going to have all kinds of alpha branding and stuff on it, or do you have total control over your own logos and your own look and things like that?
You have total control. Basically, during that PhoneGap build process, you can include your own icons that will be shown on the homepage of the mobile device. You can include your own CSS, your own styling. You can make it look like a native app. They'll never know. And we have apps in the App Store that are third parties that are full alpha applications, but you wouldn't know it. There's no marking, no branding, no little note saying made with alpha anywhere. We allow you that full control.
And so just to be clear, that's no extra cost. You get that with Alpha Anywhere. The only thing you're paying that you need to pay for that's separate from Alpha Anywhere to get to have total control is well, hosting, of course, wherever you're going to put the app, because it's going if it has a server component, but also those two licenses. I think the one from Google might be free. If not, it was pretty cheap.
Maybe if not, it's like $25 or
Yeah,
something
and
like
the one
that.
from Apple, I think, is $100.
100
So
bucks a year.
there was some confusion about, well, do we have to pay you guys some money to add a logo? And
Oh,
the answer is no. But I think what they might be thinking of is a product that we have called Alpha Launch,
that's
which is
correct. Yes.
Mhm.
No,
So with Alpha Launch, which is a product that's available in the store, what it lets you do is it lets you deploy multiple apps without having to go through the App Store process. You simply open up the app that we put in the store for you and have it, and then point it to your server. But of course, that has our branding on it because we can only submit one version of the app, and that's a piece of property that we own. But if you would like us to make you a custom version of that, we can do that, and there is a fee to do that, which varies, but you think about it in the $10,000 range or so is usually what we charge for something like that. It's a pretty good undertaking, and then we go
but the
through all
cool
the
thing,
paperwork and stuff,
but
and
that's
then you're
kind of a
done.
one. Yeah, and
It's a
then you
one
can
that,
deploy
that
as
one's a
many
one and
apps on
done.
there.
But
Yeah,
Alpha Launch is by no means required. If you and you certainly don't need to pay us anything if you just want to put an app up in the store, because that's what the software is all about. So I just want to sort
exactly.
of clear up a
Do you
little bit
know?
of. Yep.
Oh, on PhoneGap Build, there is
Mhm.
a free account for a single app, but
For a single app, right?
if you want to have up to like 25 apps, it's like $9 a month or $10 a month. It's like nominal, but there is a small fee, and we want to make sure everybody knows what that is. Um,
And if
so
since it's an Adobe product, I think it may be included with some of the Adobe Creative Suite
that is
bundles. If
true.
you're
Yeah, if you're
already,
on
already a
CC.
Photoshop or something like that, you may already have access to that at no charge. So it's really not a lot of money. I mean, you're out. Yeah, I mean, Alpha Anywhere and the hosting is really what you're paying for, but
Indeed.
everything else is included. So
Yep. And again, we're not going to, you could build 100 apps with Alpha and put them into the store. We're not going to charge you on a per app basis or anything like that. And in fact, I don't think, the dev account for Google and Apple isn't on a per app basis either. So it's extremely cost effective in terms of what it is.
mhm. Wonderful. Let's see. There's some other questions here. Um,
Yeah. By the way, Sarah has kindly put some information about how to style apps for the iPhone X series
oh,
and
excellent.
Alpha Launch. And so check your chat window for some cool links that Sarah's taken the time to put on there. It's really good stuff.
Great. Here's a question about whether legacy apps will be importable to Transform. And I don't think that we're going to have it so that you'll build an app and you'll bring it in as a Transform app, because Transform is going to be far more limited than Alpha Anywhere. It's only really meant to be a subset of the features for building out the things that you need to do quickly and easily. Um, but it doesn't allow for a ton of customization, and it can't because it's a different type of system. But
Indeed.
you will be able to take Transform content and wrap it into your Alpha Anywhere apps. And there will be some way that we're going to have Transform apps, Alpha apps, sorry, work with Transform on the device. Have basically the apps talk to each other using a technique called deep linking, which we've used before. So there's a lot of sort of exciting sort of interconnections that are possible here between those two products.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, I want to stress it over and over. Transform is built on Alpha Anywhere. So all the knowledge we're gaining building Transform, that's feeding right back out into Alpha Anywhere, a lot of the improvements and capabilities. And over time, we really see that Transform is a standalone product. Alpha Anywhere is a standalone product in terms of what it can do and the value that it can provide for people. You're not required to have both of them together. But we're finding more and more, especially now with the ability to do, say, for instance, reporting within Alpha Anywhere directly to Transform data, which we need to show a demo of that. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yep.
What's really powerful about that is that now the two of them kind of work together to produce the overall business requirement, because often Transform solves a part of the problem, which is the kind of the mobile piece of it, but it doesn't solve everything. Whereas with Alpha Anywhere, with Transform, you can kind of encompass the whole business solution. And more importantly, we're giving a lot of opportunities to our developers to and this is, and you need to consider this, is that Transform, again, we're not going to do everything in Transform. Transform is going to stay focused on a very specific set of business requirements. So we anticipate there's going to be a huge amount of, say, vertical opportunities and horizontal opportunities where people can use Alpha Anywhere to build add-on / value-added systems for Transform that could be for a single customer, but more importantly, could be for a ton of customers, meaning that anybody use Transforms, they may want this cool thing that you can do and interact with Transform. Well, that can be built with Alpha Anywhere. So I think there's going to be some great opportunities for money making from our development team, or from our developer community, based on that Transform out there. And Transform is going to have a massive footprint in terms of the number of people using it, because it doesn't take anything to get up and running on it. So we're going to have a lot of people who are going to buy Transform who are just, I want to build some forms, but then they go, I need to do X, Y, Z. Well, they may not technically have the capacity to do it, to get Alpha Anywhere and develop something. But guess what? Our team of developers already do, our third-party developers. So there's really some exciting opportunities we anticipate in the next year. As Transform gains traction, there's going to be all these opportunities that came up for Alpha Anywhere Transform integrations, and for people to build horizontal and vertical solutions using Transform as part of that. Very exciting.
Awesome. Another Transform question, and it's going to paraphrase it a little bit, but in Alpha Anywhere, you have a choice of lots of different backend connections. You can connect to MariaDB and SQL Server and Postgres and Oracle and a whole bunch of native drivers that are included, right in the box. With Transform, how is that data stored, and do we still get the choice of being able to put that data into different databases? Is the question. And I will go ahead and take a crack at that, which is,
yes.
So Transform stores data internally in a MariaDB database that you don't have direct access to except through an API. And it stores all of the data in JSON format. So what that means is that you can actually connect it to your SQL databases in lots of different ways. One really simple way, which I had shown at the conference, was using a system called Zapier. With Zapier, you can actually, Zapier, we have a Transform integration with a thing called Zapier.com. And if you go to Zapier.com, oh, thanks very much, Dan, you will be able to basically say, I'm using Alpha Transform, here's the form that I'm using, and whenever data is submitted, I would like you to insert a record into a database. You could also have Zapier do about 1,000 other things. Zapier is really very cool, and I strongly suggest signing up for a free account and trying it out, because it's just the kind of neat little workflow and automation things you can do is cool. Anyway, what you can do is, one of the integrations is MariaDB is an integration, SQL Server is an integration, and pretty much anything you can think of, there is an integration built for it. So that's a really ridiculously easy way to do it, and actually requires no programming. So you can do it that way. The way that I think a lot of Alpha developers, though, will be taking their Transform data is by using the API and perhaps even creating a web service using the new web service feature in Alpha Anywhere. And they will then basically create some Xbasic using this Transform API Explorer. So the Transform API Explorer is cool. It lets you query the Transform API and test out different calls and stuff to see what data you get back. Once you're happy with what you have in the Transform API Explorer, it actually creates the Xbasic for you. So you can copy out that Xbasic, let's say for retrieving records or for inserting records or whatever. You can copy that Xbasic data and you could paste it into a script, create a class from that script, and make that an Alpha Anywhere web service. So that web service, for example, could be there listening, and when Transform makes a call, when a record has been submitted to Alpha Anywhere, the web service would take that data, and then using any one of the built-in connectors that come with Alpha Anywhere, could then go ahead and drop that into the database of your choice. I like the background presentation here, Dion. Very, very nice here. Keep it up. So that's.
I hope it's not distracting. I don't mean it to be distracting.
So there are a couple of different ways, and I can cover, we do have actually some videos in a slide deck on sort of how that process goes together, but I would like to demonstrate that live in an upcoming webinar.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch. And
so
really
yes, you
powerful.
could connect. You could connect Transform to everything. So that's not. We happen to store it in JSON to start with, just out of flexibility, but you can use anything you want in the back end. All right, take a look through some more of the questions here. Alpha Cloud questions. No, I'm not seeing a lot more.
Not bad. We'll bang right through them.
Exactly. Well, I'll wait another 20 seconds. If another question wants to roll in, we'll take it. And if not,
Yeah.
we get to leave
I'll
5 minutes
go,
early. I don't know what I'll do with those
I'll
5 minutes. Something
go
useful.
bail out the house with all
Oh,
the
no.
water. No, we're okay. I live on a hill.
Oh, awesome.
So if I flood, everybody's in trouble.
Exactly.
So, well, thank you everybody for joining us. We always enjoy spending time with you. As you can see,
Thanks a lot for
lots of
presenting. Thanks for everyone who showed up and asked questions. You help keep these sessions lively. If you do have any other questions, go ahead and send an email to guides, guides, @alphasoftware.com, and we'd be happy to cover them. Thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next week. Take care and goodbye.